Hey YouTubers, it's Rhonda. Hey, listen, I want to talk about some more money stuff, right? The last video I talked about how not to panic um, when you have an emergency, a financial crisis or emergency. Today I want to talk about preparing for that crisis before it shows up. One of the strategies that I used um, was that I would borrow. I didn't have any after I got out of my after divorce. For me, I didn't have anything. I have credit. I have nothing, right? So at that point, it was I didn't have a credit score. I didn't have any of those things because um, my ex and I had filed bankruptcy, and it left me without any credit, anything. So when I was sort of trying to put myself back together, I didn't have any kind of credit file that my creditors would look at and say, oh, she can be trustworthy, this thing or that thing. So it took me a while to get some kind of credit history. And eventually what I did is and this is just a little background story, right? It's not, this is so that you could have context for what I'm saying, is because I had nothing. I mean, even when you go to rent a car, they want you to have a credit card, or you have to pay more with cash and all that. And those of you who don't have credit or have poor credit, you know what I'm referencing when I say that. So it was fairly difficult. But after I had gotten beyond that point and I had started to set up some credit, right? Because now at this point, I used to think, because I went to a church who taught that it was really good to be debt free and don't owe anybody, blah, 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 blah. So that was like my thinking. And it's, if you subscribe to that, amen. Okay, it works for you. But one of the issues that I found with having no credit is that you just aren't trustworthy to creditors. So you may have no debt, but they have no credit history for you to say that you're worthy, even if you're going to do things like get an insurance policy for your car. They want to see some kind of credit, okay? Or if you're going to turn the lights on at your new apartment, they want to see something. So I found that living without any type of credit history was just not sustainable for me. There are people who may be able to do it much better than me, but I was unable to pull that off. So as I started to rebuild credit and get credit cards and those kind of things, one of the things that I learned to do was to borrow money, get credit cards when I didn't need them. And one of my strategies was that I would borrow money and put it in the bank. I didn't have a need for it. I didn't have a purpose for it. I would borrow that money and put it in the bank. Now, your guru financial people may not tell you to make that kind of money strategy. Don't do that, because you're going to be paying more interest. Okay, well, they're coming from a whole different context than where I'm coming from. I'm coming from zero. Okay, and as a black female who was struggling, single black female who was struggling to put her life back together financially, I didn't have time to count up how much interest I was going to be paying if because, the bank's charge. I didn't have that kind of luxury, okay? So for those of you who may be in a similar situation, I borrowed money when I could. And what I mean by when I could, I was now holding down a job, had been employed for a couple of years, had put some money, a little tiny money to the side, and had made a few financial strides. And yet I still wasn't financially secure given my age and my history and all that. I still didn't have the backdrop of financial support. For instance, creditors, or not creditors, but financial folks will tell you, you have 3 months of salary saved up. What? All this stuff, right? I didn't have all that, as I was still trying to build back, and it took a long time to do that. But what I did have is a connection to the spiritual realm. And the strategy that I got was to borrow money and save it. That's right, you heard me correctly. I borrowed savings. And did I pay interest on it? Absolutely. Did I care? I did not. And here's why I didn't care is because I borrowed enough money to give me, in my last video, I talked about attitude money. I borrowed enough money, and we're talking tens of thousands. We're not talking like a little bit. I borrowed as much as I could, and I stacked that money in the bank. I sure did take a note on it. As long as I was employed, I could pay the note. And if I wasn't employed, I had stacked the cheese so I could pay the note. But I could also pay other stuff if I needed to. So that was my strategy. Now, I don't know if that strategy will work for you, but that was one of the things that I did in order to get me back to a financially safer place for me as a single person. Because when you have dual incomes, if he's working and you're not, you have something coming in. If she's working and you're not, you have something coming in. Even though it may not be enough, you still have something to work with. If you're a single female, single male, you don't have a pension coming in, you don't have another source of income. And I get it. Some of my, real estate folks are going to tell you that, go buy some property. I don't have anything necessarily negative to say about those options. They're not options that I like, and they're not options that I chose. There are some people who do fairly well with those options. I just don't tend to like them. I think it is extremely expensive to get into and expensive to maintain. And if something breaks, it's expensive. And and I'm particularly talking about real estate. And if your tenants don't do you well, then it could be incredibly expensive. Now, for those people who are absolutely fabulous in that market, amen. But one of the things about being in this great country that we're in is that you have options in terms of how you want to stack your cheese or make additional money. So real estate is one avenue if that works for you. If it isn't, there's YouTube, there's Amazon, there's all kind of other strategies that you can use to create your wealth, your fortune. So you don't have to like all of them, and you don't have to, be gung-ho for things that you don't really like, because there's so many other options out here that you can. So I'm getting a little bit off track. Let me get back on the track. So one of the things I wanted to talk about today was simply this, is that you create a strategy for the downtime before you need it. Now, I do get that sometimes people are just so strapped and so panicked that they can't think that way. Once you get out of that zone, because I talked about that in my last video about not being panicked, don't panic, start thinking. But once you get beyond that and really are able to concentrate a little bit better, you still may not be out of financial trauma, but at least you can you got a stable job that kind of handles your bills, this, that, and the other, and you may be able to go and borrow money. I say, I borrowed money and I put it in the bank, and that became my savings and my backup plan if things went bad, if I got laid off, if I lost my job somehow, or if some emergency came up, I could handle it. Now, you might say, well, why not just get a credit card? Well, credit card interest rates do crazy things, and they'll also, if you are in a position where you can't pay that credit card note, then they will cut your credit off, and you may need it then. So if you're not working and you need to use your credit card to get groceries and you haven't paid the bill, they will cut that card off for you, or they'll reduce your credit limit. So when you have cash, though, you have an option. It's not like they're going to cut it off. You already have it. That's why I didn't use a credit card for that. I used cash. I borrowed money, and that interest rate is stable. I didn't use a variable rate. And there's all kind of other things I could get into with interest rates and that kind of thing, but it's not necessary in this conversation. What I wanted you to know, or what I wanted to help you think through, is this. Prepare for that day before it comes, and then you're not stressed, and it keeps you from panicking. You will not panic because you have something to fall back on. So, all right, so that's the basic thing. I wanted to kind of leapfrog from the very last video that I did about not panicking. As you move up in your financial momentum, you'll be able to create a strategy that will keep you out of panic and give you some resources and some ideas to stay solid when things go left. And things do go left. They always do. They come back to the center. They go right. They go center. They go left. It's moving around. The idea is that you are mentally stable enough to handle each one of those scenarios. And you have to figure out what you need to do to keep you stable during a crisis. Sometimes it is simply practice. You have to practice being stable. For those people that I've talked to and coached that were financially panicked, it is to get them to calm down and just really think through what they have available, so that it doesn't become even more stressful than it already is. So that's just one strategy in terms of getting prepared for things that may go south. There's a lot of other things you can do. That's one of the biggest one. Other things, meaning, yeah, you can have a little savings account. Once you start putting your money back together, you know, it really depends on how much you're making and in terms of how much you can save or how much your lifestyle costs. And one of the things that I tell people is this, is you think about, I want to be rich, I want to have this much money, da, 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 da. The basic needs of life is food, water, and shelter. That's it. And to be honest, you could have a tent, okay? And then you got food and water. Real simple, okay? That's not expensive. What is expensive is your lifestyle. Your lifestyle is what kind of shoes you wear, what kind of car you drive, what kind of house you want to live in, what neighborhood you want to. That's all lifestyle. That is the cost that you have to think about and have to plan for, is your lifestyle. Because if you have an incredibly expensive lifestyle, you like going to concerts every week, you like to eat out every weekend, you like to shop every weekend, you got to have the latest and great. That's lifestyle. And that can be expensive. And if, as long as you can support that lifestyle, you're good to go. The problem becomes when you can't support that lifestyle. So, having said that, it is to really know financially what you're trying to do. So sometimes people may say, oh, I can't afford that, or I don't make enough money. Know that you're trying to support a certain type of lifestyle. If you don't have to have brand new shoes every day, every week, you don't have to have the latest Jordans, you don't have to drive the Land Rover, you don't have to, drive the Mercedes, and you don't have to do all that, then your lifestyle cost will be lower and you have more money to invest in other things that may give you more options later. So I'll pick up a little bit more later. This may seem like a little bit of a ramble, but for those of you who like or enjoy what my subject matters and my topics, please like and subscribe, and also share the video. Hopefully I'll be able to bring some more highlights, and I'll organize my conversations a little bit more as I talk more about money and just encouraging items, different things to encourage you on. Again, my name is Rhonda. Please like, subscribe, and share. All right? Have a great day.